Um, it's been a long time, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new studio. I've had to move house, as many of you know. I moved in May, and I stopped really producing videos in March because I had all the shit to deal with that one has to deal with when one moves. And I moved, and I still haven't particularly unpacked much, if anything. I've been really bad on that front. Actually, I've been really lax at unpacking. Don't mind me. I just moved a few things when I started filming and um, dropped a brush and some paint. So I'm just dealing with that while I talk to you. So I haven't unpacked much at all. The reason is that short version, I had my gallbladder removed 4 years ago, and it's been fine. I've had no problems. Recently, I've started to get some problems with bile, overproduction of bile, and I'm now taking ursodeoxycholic acid, and it's fine. I feel better now, but it meant for a long time I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't sleeping properly, and that kind of made the whole getting over the move, which is very stressful physically and kind of emotionally as well for me because I didn't want to move. I had to move due to a flood caused by a neighbour. It was a really long story. Anyway, this is my first video since I've moved, and I've been determined to make one, but other YouTubers will know this feeling. Sometimes you really want to make a video and you have to make it right there and then. I had that feeling a few weeks ago, so I was like, I know where my tripod is, I'll do it. And I ran into my studio to do it, and I couldn't find a thing that attaches my camera to the tripod. So I had to buy another one, which means that at some point very soon, now I've spent money on a new one, I'll find the old one. But that's where we are. So let's just see how this new setup works. Yep, we can see that's really good. So, by popular demand, I have been asked by many of you to review the core paints. A lot of people have been asking for my views on them. I've kind of resisted them for a long time, and that has only been because the price in the UK has been a lot and the number of suppliers in the UK hasn't been great, so I haven't been able to shop around. However, I bought these on Amazon US, a 24 set, and that was about it was 84 US dollars for the set, and I had some vouchers and I didn't pay for postage on it and everything, so I think I got it for about 70 in the end, which was really cool. So it's a set of 24, as I say, comes in a nice tin, and I have been playing with them a little bit. So this is not quite the first impression video that I'm making it out to be, but it's near as damn it. So they come in a really nice useful tin, and you could use that as a palette, as many people do. And you get your 24 tubes of paint. Now these are all flipped over because I've been looking at the information on the back just now. So they arrive with that way up so you can see them. Now they're made by Golden, which are a really good company of colourmen who make great acrylic paints, and the amazing Cinnamon Cooney does all her work in Golden, and I'll link to her up there so you can see her. Little information leaflet talks about paints and gives you swatches of the whole range. Not a lot of information on there, no pigment info, that's on the tubes. So I've decided I need a swatch that'll fit in the box. I want something that fits in the tin with all the colours actually painted out, and basic pigment info for me, for speed, for reference. And I thought, while I'm making that, I may as well film it for you guys so you can get some info. Now, Golden makes some interesting claims. They say that their exclusive binder, which is Aquazol, which was originally designed, I believe, as a coolant for engines or something like that, but it's a good sort of suspending medium for pigments, and it doesn't have any colour or tone to it. It's pretty much like water. It's like viscous water. Resembles glycerine to look at. Whereas the traditional binders, gum arabic and gum Senegal, that are used in traditional watercolour are very pale yellowish or brownish, which obviously means that colours that are the complements of those yellowy tones like purples and so on and magentas may not look as vivid because there may be some complementary neutrality cancelling going on. So Golden boast that Cause exclusive binder gives colour greater intensity and clarity. Core offers a strength, range and versatility unmatched in the history of watercolours. Well, the comment on the range being unmatched is bollocks, because there's nothing in their range that you can't find elsewhere, so that's a lie. Strength of colour, well, we'll see. Quality, that's kind of subjective. From my playing I've done, I don't think they go very far. I mean, if I put out a centimetre of paint onto a tile and paint with it, I'm finding I'm having to reload really quickly and put more paint out from the tube. Whereas with Winsor & Newton or Schmincke, I can paint a whole painting with that kind of amount. So I think some of them at least, I think are quite dilute, but we'll see. So zooming in, this is my little sketchy swatch sheet. So I've done 2 lines of black alcohol marker, which was Spectrum Noir True Black. Let that dry for an hour, because you must make sure there's no alcohol remaining, otherwise you get a weird effect. That's so I can see transparency. I put dots of the paints along the top, and I did that by just taking the tube, taking the cap off, squeezing up the paint so it's just at the top, and then going like a bingo dobber. Not that I play bingo, obviously. Well, I have been known in my life to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint down each of these, and I'm going to do it with a size 0 Pro Art squirrel brush. Don't bother commenting that squirrel's evil. I've had these brushes a long time, and it's down to personal choice. You use what you want to use, I'll use what I want to use, and let's just agree to disagree, okay? I would never chastise someone for their choice of brushes or food. It's none of my business. So, first one is Cadmium Yellow Primrose, which uses PY35, which is the standard cad yellow, cadmium zinc sulfide, and they give it a light fastness of 1. So it's got some opacity to it. The camera doesn't really do it justice. The camera has really washed out the tone. It's a very vivid, it's almost like bismuth yellow. It's a really beautiful, vivid, cold yellow. So it's kind of like an opaque version of a Hansa Yellow Light or something like that. And this really brings me to my first comment on this set. The versatility of this set isn't great, because I don't think they've given a really useful range of colours, but we'll come on to that. Next is Nicolazo Yellow, which uses PY150, which is Nicolazo Yellow, and again, light fastness is 1. This is one of those colours that looks a little bit brown or grey in mass tone, but once you dilute it down, that's why I gave it a bit more space so I could, you get a really nice colour, and it's got a lot of depth to it. It develops not a texture or a granulation or anything like that, but because when it's in thicker or mass tone, it looks more brown. When you paint it out, you do get kind of yellows and browns together, and it's really very, very, very good, and I use it a lot. Next one is Quinacridone Gold, which uses PO48, which is quinacridone gold. Now, a lot of people are under the misapprehension, or misconception, I should say, that that is discontinued. It's not. It's PO49 quinacridone deep gold that is discontinued. This is Quin Gold. This is still manufactured. It's cut in this case with PY150 Nicolazo Yellow to dilute it, because it's an expensive pigment, to make it cheaper. So let's see how that looks. It's like a richer, warmer version of it, and it's a nice transparent orangey gold, very useful colour, very versatile. If I mix the two together, it would look very pretty indeed. It goes a long way. I might try and just wet that a little bit more so that it bleeds from the spot. And again, it's one of those colours that has, for a transparent colour, has a lot of texture. If you compare how those two colours look compared to the Cadmium Yellow Primrose, they're very textural and rich and have a lot of depth, whereas the Cad Yellow Primrose is rather flat. Next one is Diarylide Yellow, which I think they've kind of included as an alternative to a Cad Yellow Deep. And it uses Pigment Yellow 83, and on the tube they've labelled it brackets HR70. Now, Pigment Yellow 83 is Diarylide Yellow HR, and HR70 is a sub-pigment of it, which is called Novoperm Yellow, which is a particularly deep version of it. So this has a light fastness, I should say the last one had a light fastness of 2. This one has a light fastness of something like good or excellent, which means it hasn't got an ATSM light fastness rating. So I'm classing it as not rated on my version. It's kind of a fake cad yellow deep in a way, and it's quite a flat colour. I don't think it's got a lot of life to it, like the two next door. I should say I'm painting on Bockingford Rough, so that's a cotton pulp paper. No, sorry, it's a chemical pulp paper, rough surface. I'm just using at the end of a block. Cad Red Medium next, which uses pigment red 108, cadmium red, and has of course a light fastness of 1. Now this is an interesting. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's transparent pyrrole orange, PO71, pyrrole orange, light fastness not rated. It's another one of these organic pigments that has a lot of texture and depth to it without having granulation, heavily staining colour. This one is cadmium red medium, pigment red 108. Sorry, this top row are a little bit squashed together because I hadn't quite worked out the spacing. So this is quite a almost a cool looking red. And cad red is obviously usually very orange. This one's very almost pinky bluish toned red, which is quite interesting, quite nice, useful to have. And it's got some nice granulation on the rough surface of the paper here. Next one's Permanent Scarlet, which is pigment red 168, anthraquinone scarlet, and this is again light fastness not rated. Nice scarlet there, a very warm red, and we'll see how that looks once it's had a chance to migrate. The nice thing we're doing with the spot charts is the spot will continue to diffuse pigment for a while, so you don't need to kind of fully suspend it. Quinacridone magenta next, pigment red 122, which is quinacridone red. Little goes a long way with this one. Oh, sorry, no, this is permanent alizarin crimson, which is pigment red 177, anthraquinone red. So you've got a nice kind of cherry red there, and similar to the permanent scarlet. The permanent scarlet is more of a scarlet, i.e. a brownish red. This is more of a cherry red. Permanent alizarin crimson as an alternative to normal alizarin crimson, which is fugitive as hell. And that has light fastness not rated. Next up is Quin Magenta, which is a beautiful colour, and again a little goes a long way with the quinacridones, heavily staining. I don't mind that these colours are running into each other. I find that useful. It shows me what kind of in-betweens you can get. Next up is Dioxazine Purple, pigment violet 23, Dioxazine Violet, and this has got a huge pigment load. So look at that gorgeous inky purple, very, very, very beautiful. And I'm going to let them run into each other because it's actually quite pretty, and it's showing me what these are capable of when they mix. Ultramarine Blue next, pigment blue 29, ultramarine light fastness 1. Very standard ultramarine blue there, nothing unusual about it. Lots of granulation already, even before it's starting to dry, which I really like. And next up is Cerulean Blue Chromium, which uses pigment blue 36:1, which is a zinc, cobalt, chromium, aluminium spinel, which is the cheap alternative to pigment blue 36, which is the proper cerulean blue. So this is a cheap knockoff where they're just trying to save money rather than using actual cerulean blue, and this has got a light fastness of 1. I'll have a look in a second at their range and see if they do offer the real thing, because it may be that they're just doing it so that you don't have to pay for a Series 4 colour if you don't want to. So they offer a French cerulean blue, which I'm going to imagine is the expensive version of the same thing. I'm going to guess at that, which has obviously got a much more greenish tone than the cerulean blue chromium, it's nice, but I don't really use cerulean blues much because obviously they're very opaque, and I like nice transparent luminous colour. So Next up, we have Phthalo Blue Green Shade, which is Pigment Blue 15:3, which is Phthalo Blue Green Shade, which is a copper phthalocyanine in the beta form. Again, little goes a long way with this one. It's one of the most heavily staining and most highly pigmented colours out there. And I think people worry that if they get it too dark, it's just going to look awful and spoil everything. But I actually think it can look very pretty, especially in gradients, when you're doing more abstract work, or if you're doing the kind of work where you keep the values as they are in real life but go crazy with the colours. Phthalo Blue is great for that because you can get such a wide range of darkness with it, because you can go really dark. Next is Cobalt Teal, which uses PG50, which is cobalt titanate green spinel. A very nice cobalt green. Usually it's more of a green than this. You can grind it in different ways to get different colours. It's a heavily granulating pigment, and again it's a light fastness not determined here. I'm going to touch it against this one just to let them do their thing and mingle, see what it does. Got a lot of texture and a lot of granulation there, but if you look at the top row in comparison, I would rather have these kinds of colour with texture than the granulating ones for a lot of purposes. I just prefer that. Next we have Viridian Green, which is Pigment Green 18 Viridian, aka hydroxylated chromic oxide or chromic hydroxide. It's a chrome-based pigment, goes very well with purples. Chromium exists in two oxidation states principally in nature. One is this kind of green, and one is a deep, very vibrant purple. And colours that occur together in nature tend to work well to our eyes. So this one does go well. It doesn't have a very high pigment load, as you can see. You know, I've resuspended almost all of the spot, but there's bugger all there. There's really not a lot of pigment. And that was one of the ones that I was concerned about previously. Next we have Sap Green. Now this has got a mixture of three things in it. It's got Pigment Green 36, which is Phthalo Green Yellow Shade, which is a brominated chlorinated copper phthalocyanine. It has got Pigment Red 101, which is red iron oxide, and it's got Pigment Yellow 150, which is nickel azo yellow. So it's a yellowish green that's got a red added to it to mute it down. And you can almost kind of see that that's what it is. It's got this lovely dye-based, beautiful, vibrant green undertone, and then it's got this granulating red on the top that gives it that lovely texture and depth. Sap Green is a favourite of mine. Next we have my really favourite green, which is Green Gold, which uses Pigment Yellow 129, which is Urgazan Yellow, which is what you always find as Green Gold pretty much. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous yellow with a lot of depth to it. Really very pretty. How can you not love that colour? And it works so well with other things, which is why I've spread it across. Next we have Raw Sienna Natural, which uses Pigment Yellow 43, which is natural yellow iron oxide. And I was quite impressed with this when I tried it out the other day. It doesn't lift awfully well, but it's a nice one because it's got a bit of a yellow, sorry, got a bit of a red tone to it. It's like a gold ochre almost. A lot of raw siennas are very yellow and very weak, and this one I thought was quite nice. I've now got yellow all over me because I've left a blob of paint on the paper to mess with later. Next we have Burnt Sienna Natural, which is Pigment Brown 7, which is brown iron oxide, and that same pigment number can be natural or synthetic. Lovely, lovely, lovely colour. It's got a real richness to it without being overpowering and terribly opaque. I really like that, and I found that you can actually glaze with that, which is unusual for an iron pigment for that to work too well. Now we've got Raw Umber Natural, which is the same pigment number, but it will be ground differently, which should give us a dark greyish brown, which is what it's doing. And that's a really good raw umber, actually. That's what raw umbers should look like. They very often don't. They're very often very brown and they don't have much texture to them, but they should have this kind of greeny grey edge to them. Van Dyke Brown next, which is Pigment Red 101, which is what you often get as burnt sienna. So it's nice to have a brown iron oxide used instead of a red one. So this should be more of a, nice deep reddish brown, traditional Van Dyke Brown. Very finely ground, it's got a lot of movement and a lot of texture. Payne's Grey next, and this one's a bit of an unusual Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey are usually based on ultramarine. This one's based on the same phthalo blue pigment, PB13, mixed with PBK7, which is lamp black, which is basically soot, and PB19, which is quinacridone violet or quinacridone rose. So it's a slightly unusual mix, but it's got a lot of feathering and movement because of the phthalo blue. And that was one thing I don't like about a lot of the colours, is that they have that feathering effect, which I'll show you in a little while. Next up is Neutral Tint, which is a very similar kind of mix. This one is PY42, so yellow ochre, yellow iron oxide, synthetic. Pigment Red 122, which was quinacridone red, used in quinacridone magenta up here, and the phthalo blue again. So it's a slightly different version of the same sort of mix. Much more neutral though, much less blue. And last up we have Titanium White, which is Pigment White 6, and I don't know why I even bother swatching it. I will probably never use it, but there it is. This sort of feathering issue, some of the colours have it, particularly the phthalo blue and the quinacridone, and I believe it's caused by the detergent levels or the surfactant levels in the paint being a little bit too much maybe. So if I just wet some paper here and then I take some green gold and drag it through, it's spreading out. Oh, sorry, I forgot to zoom out. There we go. So I put some green gold onto some wet paper here, and it's spreading out in quite a natural way. It's not making weird patterns or weird shapes. If I were to take some phthalo blue from over here and run that through, you see it kind of made a big swoosh like a wave, and that's not really what I want. And you get it also with the quinacridone magenta, where you see it's pushing against the other colours, and you can't control that. It's very hard to control these paints, and that's why I've been playing with them for a week, because I was surprised that they did this and that they're so hard to control. But the green gold behaves perfectly normally, but others it seems like there's a little bit too much detergent for the pigment that there is, which implies to me they're probably making one base mix of all the components and then adding the pigment to them, whereas companies like Schmincke make an individual base mix to each individual pigment to avoid these kinds of issues. So it's hard to say whether that's what they're really doing, but it's what it feels like to me. So I'm just mixing in some bits that when I squeezed out the tube, some of the colours kind of erupted. So I wiped them on the top of the page here, and there's some Cad Primrose, which has gone everywhere. Some quinacridone gold here, which is very bubbly, very detergenty, and I think that one's Payne's Grey, which has done what you get if you make a Jane's Grey, which is burnt sienna mixed with a French ultramarine. Sometimes they will separate on the paper, and that's what this one has done under the conditions I applied it under. You can see that the different components, like the I think it's Neutral Tint actually. No, it's not. This is Payne's Grey. So you've got the separation of the different types of colour that are in there, and it's kind of chromatographied, and that's not really what you want from a Payne's Grey. It's not supposed to do that. So I find some of the behaviour a little bit odd and a little bit hard to control. So that's one thing I would say. I mean, the colours are pretty, but there's nothing special about them. There's certainly not these miraculous paints that they're sort of making them out to be. Sorry, I just didn't know what that bottle was. It's Flow Enhancer for acrylic. Don't know why I've got it on my desk. It's a problem with, because I've moved, a lot of things are in boxes, so I'm having to improvise. So I just wanted to get that cadmium pigment off my hand, not because I'm scared of it, but because it's annoying me because I'm getting it everywhere. I did a couple of, not quite paintings, but sketches, just to try out some of the colours. First thing I did when I first got them was on, again, a piece of Bockingford Rough. I just did a lot of wet into wet. This is not a painting by any means. This is literally just me splashing colour onto the page. And I got a lot of this feathering effect happening when I didn't want it to be. This was me mixing together some of the different colours, just wet into wet. And when I put the dioxazine purple on, it feathered a lot. I did this kind of tree wet into wet just for fun, and it did it a bit, but not so badly. And I saw it a lot when I did this sky just for fun. This sky did not do what I wanted it to do. So this is ultramarine blue painted over a very fine quinacridone magenta wash, very fine, and then I put neutral tint into it to add some storm clouds. And normally when I would do like a streak of ultramarine, it would slowly creep out and leave the white areas as very natural cloud shapes. But this kind of did these river delta like kind of runs that I couldn't control, and it didn't leave me nice clouds, and that's not what I'm used to at all, and that was very strange. What was nice is, and you're viewing it upside down because I don't think I can get it under the camera properly. Oh no, maybe I can. I did do this kind of swamp, just layering up layers of green, and then I added in wet into wet these little tuffets with burnt sienna that have kind of bled out and made some interesting sort of islands on this swampy landscape. So you can get some pretty effects, but it's almost like relearning watercolour in a way, because this is not how I'm used to watercolour behaving. And guys, you know my channel, I have reviewed dozens of brands of watercolour paint. I have used lots of brands of watercolour paint. This is not what I am used to. So if you've used Core and you've had a different experience and you found it better, comment, let me know. What have you done that's overcome this rapid movement, this rapid spread and this feathering that is so hard to control? And I know I'm not the only person who struggles with that. I think Mandy van Goya, who I'll link to up there, I seem to remember she struggled with it. Possibly this brand, I may be wrong, I think it was this brand though that she had the same issue with. So let me know in the comments what you think. I mean, I like the colours, but there's nothing special about them that kind of enamors me to this brand rather than what I normally use. I think the use of Aquazol is a bit gimmicky. I am going to do another video where I will do side-by-side comparisons of different brands for pigment load, for colour, for tone, for all sorts of things, to see if the Aquazol really makes a difference or not, because I think that's important, that if you're going to go out and buy a new, if you're moving up to professional paints and you want a new brand, that you're not buying them thinking that there's something they're not, or you're not buying them thinking they're going to be better than the brand you've already got when maybe they won't be. Just to let you know what's coming up, I managed to get this Sennelier Voyage set relatively cheaply, which is 8 colours and some sheets of watercolour paper, travel brush, and a couple of brushes from the Soft Aqua 845 series. There's a 2 and an 8, plus the little travel brush that's in the set. And it's in a little metal travel set, and then the whole thing is in a metal tin as well. And this normally retails for about £50, and I got it for 30, purely to review it because people have been asking me about Sennelier, and I thought, okay, I've got the opportunity here. Then I don't see them in the shops in the UK very often, but they were in my local art shop. They clearly bought the end of a line. It was a point in the summer where people aren't really buying travel stuff anymore because people have usually by now travelled. So they were selling it cheap and they gave it to me at a really good price. Thank you them. So thank you all very much, and I hope I'm going to post this tonight, and hopefully it'll upload. First episode of Game of Thrones Season 7 will be airing at 2 AM in the UK, and I'm going to stay up for it because I'm a sad bastard with no life. And hopefully this will be uploaded by then. So thank you all very much, and good evening, and it's really nice to be back.